Today, we're taking on a subject that, well, it brings up a lot of strong emotions and, often some pretty immediate judgment. We're talking about infidelity and love triangles.
Right. And for this deep dive, we've pulled together source material that really forces you to just pause all the moralizing for a second and look purely at the mechanics of it.
Exactly. Because when infidelity happens, the knee-jerk assumption is always, malice or revenge or just a total disregard for the partner.
But our sources challenge that completely.
They really do. They argue that the root motivation is rarely about actively hurting the person you love.
Which is a huge mental shift for most of us.
Okay, let's unpack this. If it's not about malice, then what is it about? The sources suggest it's less about punishing the partner and far more about helping the self.
It's an attempt at self-preservation, a
Okay.
quest for fulfillment when some really key needs just go unmet.
And that differentiation is really the cornerstone of this whole analysis, isn't it?
It is. It's essential for you, the learner, to grasp this. The sources, they start with a really clear premise. No mentally healthy person actually wants to intentionally inflict pain on someone they genuinely love.
Okay, but there has to be an exception there.
There is, and we should clarify it right up front. If the cheating comes from this deep, suppressed anger that's just festered into resentment.
So the person is actively seeking revenge.
Exactly. That's a distinct psychological issue. It's often about power or retribution that's, sort of outside this general framework we're discussing.
Got it. So what we're focusing on here are the other cases, the majority of them.
Right, where the person, even while feeling affection for their primary partner, is just driven by this deep sense of lack.
Please like, subscribe, and leave a comment. You are doing important work.
The goal, however convoluted and damaging the method is self-fulfillment.
So they're trying to improve their own life or maybe just make it survivable while keeping the main relationship intact.
That's the paradox of it,
Right.
yes.
It shifts the whole focus. It moves it from being a simple character flaw to a missing piece in the system. But I guess the question is, what are these critical needs?
Well, the sources list them out, and when you look at the list, you realize just how much pressure we put on a single person. It's vast.
Things like emotional closeness, being great friends,
Right, having shared values, common goals, enjoying each other's company, and then, the big ones, amazing sex and intimacy.
and just feeling understood, supported.
Above all, being understood and supported unconditionally. When you see that whole list, you can see how one person might, well, fall short.
So the conclusion then is that infidelity is fundamentally a desperate, maybe misguided attempt to love oneself, to feel whole when those needs aren't being met.
That's what the sources argue.
Okay, I have to push back a little on that because this idea of self-love causing such profound harm to someone else, it can sound like a really high-level rationalization.
Of course. And the pain is undeniable.
So how do the sources account for that? For the catastrophic pain this causes? Doesn't focusing just on mechanics, risk, downplaying the selfishness of the betrayal.
That's a crucial point, and they tackle it directly. They use this concept of symptom versus cause.
Okay.
What's fascinating here is that the sources argue cheating is not the root cause of the relationship failure. It is the consequence.
A symptom.
It's the symptom. Think of it like a sore throat. The soreness isn't the real problem, right? It's the symptom of a deeper issue. Maybe you were exposed to a draft or you have a virus.
So the infidelity is just the painful, visible sign that something was already systemically wrong.
A significant need deficiency that was already there. Precisely. The affair is the fever, not the disease. The relationship was already sick.
And that's why these things don't just happen out of the blue, as they say.
Never. If a love triangle has formed, the groundwork for it was laid long, long ago. It's been building because an essential need went unfulfilled, whether the person even consciously realized it or not.
That timeline is so key because it pushes the responsibility back onto the structure of the relationship itself, not just the single moment of betrayal.
And that structure often fails because we're all operating under this illusion of total fulfillment.
The Hollywood myth that one person is supposed to be your everything.
Right. Here's where it gets really interesting. The source material just states it unequivocally. Perfect relationships do not exist. It's a fantasy.
So every relationship is basically just an exercise in narrowing the gaps.
Constant effort, compromise, communication. But when those gaps become chasms in really critical areas like support or communication or intimacy, the person starts looking for a way to balance their emotional life.
The motivation isn't to destroy the life they have, but to supplement what's missing.
Exactly. And the sources offer these specific, really compelling case studies that they illuminate this perfectly.
Let's hear one.
Okay, so consider the example of a woman. She may have a husband who provides security, financial stability, maybe even great sexual passion.
It's making me good so far.
But he is completely emotionally unavailable. He can't do deep, meaningful communication. He doesn't offer any support or validation for her career, her inner life.
So she has the passion, but she's missing the partnership.
She is starving for it. And then she meets a colleague at work who is a superb listener, who sees her, validates her ambitions, gives her the psychological support she craves.
And a triangle starts to form.
But the sources say she starts the affair not to divorce her husband, but, and this is the terrifying part, to balance both. She's trying to keep the stability and passion she has while filling that aching void externally.
Wow, that's a tough concept to swallow because that attempt at balancing is what will inevitably destroy the very foundation she's trying to preserve.
It's the core tragedy of it.
And this isn't gender specific, I assume. There's a parallel case for men.
It's the flip side of the same coin. Take the example of a man with a wife who is, by all measures, a wonderful partner, a great mother, beautiful home. He fulfills his emotional needs and family role perfectly inside the marriage. But the passion is gone. The sexual relationship is non-existent or maybe even hostile. There's no physical intimacy left.
So he seeks that elsewhere.
He seeks fulfillment with a mistress, satisfying that really primal need for sexual connection. He's desperate to avoid disrupting the family because he does have emotional closeness with his wife as a co-parent, but he's outsourcing the physical part.
So whether it's emotional closeness or physical intimacy, the pattern holds. People are driven to seek fulfillment from other sources when the primary one is severely lacking.
It's almost like a law of emotional physics, according to the sources. It sounds like we're analyzing a coping mechanism, however maladaptive it is.
That really is the core message then. We're looking at the internal mechanics, the motivational drive.
And again, this isn't to excuse the damage. It's to understand why people who seem to care for each other still take this route. The rule remains. Triangles only form when needs are unmet. If all your needs were fulfilled, there'd be no reason for a third person.
Okay, but before we get to prevention, we have to talk about that exception you mentioned earlier, the category where this needs-based model doesn't quite apply.
Yes, we need to be very clear about the difference between a stressed partner and a chronic cheater.
A vital distinction for anyone listening.
The source material outlines this critical exception. Individuals with weak moral principles or very low emotional intelligence.
So these are people whose primal instincts just consistently override their conscience.
On their commitment. They might cheat easily, repeatedly, and not because the relationship is failing, but just because an opportunity presents itself and their disposition allows it.
So for the partner in that situation, the question isn't what was missing in our relationship.
No. The question is, how long did it take me to recognize this person's inherent moral character? In that case, the problem truly is the individual, not just the dynamic.
That separation is so important. It isolates the preventable cases from the character-based ones. So let's focus on all those other cases now, the ones where it is a symptom. What are the preventative steps?
Prevention starts with some brutal self-analysis. You have to move beyond just blaming.
So what does that look like?
The sources say you have to identify the specific areas that were so chronically unfulfilled that cheating became a viable way to reduce frustration. Were you living separately for long periods? Was there constant unresolved conflict? A total collapse of intimacy?
Those are the precursors, the warning signs.
The flashing red lights, that the gap is widening, but the solution has to be communication.
Right. And the sources have this amazing set of questions that partners should be proactively asking each other. It's about moving past just, I'm unhappy.
You have to get specific.
The questions are things like, what do you need in our relationship right now, and what are you missing?
Also, what do you like about me? Which is a great one. And the hard ones, what bothers you? And what do you wish I did more often?
It sounds so simple when you just list them like that.
It does, but the real deep dive is understanding why couples fail to ask them. And the reason is suppressed anger.
Explain that.
Well, the sources say many people just swallow their frustration. They swallow their anger. But that toxicity, it doesn't just disappear. It turns into grudges, passive-aggressive demands, resentment.
And you can't genuinely ask what bothers you if you're still secretly holding onto a grudge from 3 years ago.
You can't. The emotional barrier of that unexpressed anger, it prevents the honesty you need to ask those questions. And to really hear the answers, you have to clear the anger first.
which is where specific tools come in. You can't just tell someone to stop suppressing anger. You need to process.
Exactly. For couples struggling with this, the source material specifically highlights things like the simple formula for communication. It's mentioned because it provides a clear 4-step structure to help you separate your feeling from your need and express anger without it becoming an attack.
It gives you a mechanical pathway through the emotional chaos.
That's a perfect way to put it.
So the mechanics of prevention really depend on having the mechanics of communication in place first. But what happens once the betrayal has already occurred?
The consequences are profound, devastating. The sources make this incredibly powerful statement about the aftermath.
Which is?
At the moment of betrayal, the original couple, the original family, it ceases to be. It's not a rupture, it's an ending. The relationship as it was defined, it effectively ended before the affair even began.
Because the shared path had already splintered. That's a concept that really needs to sink in for a moment. When one partner strays, they're signaling they've already stepped off the path you agreed to walk together.
And the consequence is the death of the relationship as you knew it. If that couple then chooses to work through it, they are not repairing the old thing, they are building something entirely new.
Using the lessons from the collapse of the first one.
And they themselves are fundamentally changed by trauma. The new bond has to be defined by new terms, new commitments to fulfillment.
This really brings the definition of true love that's in our material into sharp focus. We often think of deep relationships as being full of painful lessons, but the sources argue that true love itself doesn't bring pain.
It's defined by what it lacks. There's no room for manipulation, no intentional cruelty. There is no desire to hurt or punish or to constantly try and reshape a person to fit your expectations.
Or definitely no space for revenge.
Absolutely not. True love, according to this definition, is simply about accepting a person exactly as they are, the good, the bad, the whole package, and making a conscious choice to walk alongside them in the same direction.
Towards shared goals. The moment infidelity occurs, that shared path is just fundamentally broken.
It is. And rebuilding means accepting that the original dynamic is gone and painstakingly reestablishing those core commitments. Mutual acceptance, shared direction, and open, non-suppressed communication.
So what does this all mean? The takeaway for you, the learner, is pretty clear. Infidelity is rarely an arbitrary act of malice. It's a powerful, painful signal that the relationship's fabric had already frayed because something critical was missing.
The love triangle is just the consequence, the symptom of an emptiness that one partner was attempting to fill, often desperately for their own self-preservation.
And that leads us to our final provocative thought for you to explore.
If true love is defined by acceptance and walking together in the same direction, and infidelity marks the moment that shared path broke, what tangible, mechanical steps beyond just talking must both partners commit to in order to redefine their mutual path? How do you ensure you're truly walking together again, not just side by side, when you're building a new relationship from the ashes of the old?
It really requires reevaluating not just the commitment, but the fundamental structure of your shared life.
Please like, subscribe, and leave a comment. If you want to overcome betrayal, break toxic cycles, take control of your relationship choices, read How to Deal with a Love Triangle. The link is below the video.